question here, we're working with percentages. Now in it, we're told that the value of something has increased by 8% and is now worth something, and we want to know how much he paid for the flat to begin with. This question here is reverse percentages, because we've already been told that it's increased. This is what it is after the increase. We want the original. Now remember, reverse percentages, the first thing we need to do is figure out what percent we now have. We then have to work back by going to 1% and then multiplying up to get to the original. So what percent do we now have? Well, it's increased, it's gone up by 8%. So now we have 108%. And we know that that 108% is equal to 94,500. So now what we want to do is go to 1% and then go to the original price of 100%. So to go from 108 to 1%, we could take away 107, but remember, we're not allowed to do that because we don't know what 1% is yet to take away. So what we're going to do is divide by 108. Once we've got the 1%, we times it by 100. Now remember, this is just like algebra. What we do to one side, we do to the other. So to match this up and keep the calculation going properly, I'm going to take the 94,500 and I'm going to divide it by 108. Then I'm going to take my solution for that and I'm going to times it by 100. And that'll then match up the cost with the original. Once I've done that, I'll then have my original price. So if I do 94,500 and I divide it by 108, what I end up getting is 875. So I know 1% of the original price is £875, and if I multiply it by 100, I get £87,500. So what I can then say is fine, so the original is equal to £87,500. So I've worked back the way and I've said how much Nadeem paid for the flat originally, 87.5 grand. Question like this is fairly straightforward. The biggest thing you need to do is that first step. That first step of identifying what percentage we now have is key. The rest of the steps are standard. Find 1%, find the original. But that first step is the vital one. If you cannot figure that out, then we're not on track. And this one's not about finding 8% of 94,500 and then taking it off. 8% of 94,500 is different from 8% of the original being added on. So don't fall into that trap. We're working back the way to the original. So a question like this, you get 1 mark for doing that first step and identifying it. You get a second mark for working down to 1, and you get your third mark for figuring out the original price of how much Nadeem paid. So 3 marks, 3 steps. Again, the big one, identifying that first step. The other 2 steps we follow through and they're the same every single time. So if we can get that first part nailed, we know how to follow through and get to the next 2 steps. So after that, it becomes easy peasy, lemon squeezy.